Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Burklow. I am the technology consultant with Pearson, working directly with Colin Bonner and CDE related to the Colorado Summative online test. And today on the phone, we're going to have myself, Colin Bonner from CDE, as well as Brian Martins, who will be talking through and demonstrating some of the product here with us, and Dave Erickson, who will be as well as participating in some of the demonstration. What I wanted to do is, first of all, again, those of you that possibly just joined, if you can, please email to Colin, just a quick little email just to let him know that you attended today's meeting so we can have a record of attendance. I would appreciate that. The purpose of today's meeting, Colin and I have been going around and talking with all of the districts and different things of that nature. One of the things that we have available to everybody is the Pearson Access training site. And in the Pearson Access training site, you can actually go out there, end up and configure all your proctor caching device. And in addition to that configuration, basically do an end-to-end test, and that is taking it all the way through to where you bring up an online test session using TestNav. And so the purpose of today's demonstration is to take you through that end-to-end process, the process of basically downloading and installing proctor caching onto a device, as well as configuring that proctor cache device within Pearson Access and TestNav, and then basically taking that through, once again, the capability of being able to execute a test on TestNav itself. And so in order to do this, what I wanted to do is kind of walk everybody through a little bit as far as the architecture once again. And so on your screen, what you see is the basic architecture that we utilize. And from the left to the right is the Pearson Access server as well as the proctor cache machine. And then you have your network file share basically over on the right-hand side. As we have met with everybody, what we emphasize is utilizing proctor caching for the test. And in essence, what that does, that allows the test content to be downloaded from the Pearson Access server onto your proctor cache device, which then that device serves the individual student test devices for administering the test. And then while they're actually executing the test itself, their student response files, their responses to each one of the questions are being saved in two different locations, and that will be walked through in the demonstration here. The default location is to the computer hard drive, and the secondary location we recommend is out to the network file share itself so that we have a backup location. All right. Just as a reminder, Monday starts the elementary and middle school field test, and that goes September 16th through September 30th. And then on October 28th, we will start the high school field test window. The demonstration that we are going through today will support both the elementary and high school field test windows. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Brian Martins, and we will allow Brian Martins in essence will be taking us through the process of downloading the proctor cache software and configuring that through Pearson Access and TestNav. If I can ask everybody to please mute your phones, I would appreciate it, and that way we won't have any interruptions.
Welcome to Reservationless Plus conferencing. Enter your conference code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Again, let me ask Brian, I've already transferred control to you, so you should have it. So again, let me ask for everybody to please mute their lines.
You will now be placed into conference.
That way we won't hear the background.
Press *6. To unmute, press #6.
Okay, since we have some background noise, I'm going to go ahead and mute all lines. Once I do get them muted, if you do want to ask a question, which I'm going to ask that each one of you hold your questions off until the end of the presentation here. That way we'll have an end-to-end demo. And so, Brian, let me go ahead and let you get started.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me now. Got rid of a little bit of the background noise. Sorry about that. So we're going to go through this kind of start to finish what you do for site readiness. The first point we're just going to be talking about because there's really nothing to show, but number one, DTC is identify your school technology coordinators. The reason that's in there is that sometimes the DTCs don't know who in their respective schools they need to rely on to help get their schools ready. We ran into that a few times, and so we put this step in here. Once those are identified, we want to make sure that the STCs view the site readiness technical training so that they know what they need to be aware of as far as getting ready for online testing, the best practices, configuration information, everything like that. For number three, configure your firewalls or content filters. I am going to flip over here, and I'm going to show you the information on where you can find that. You can go to pearsononlinetesting.com/testnav. Make sure that capital T and capital M/7. And that comes up, and you guys are using 7512. So I click on that link, and as I scroll down the requirements here, you'll see that we have firewalls, proxy servers, content filtering, anything like that that monitors that may potentially block or alter any sort of traffic. You need to make sure that testnav.com and pearsonaccess.com on ports 80 and 443 are both explicitly allowed. Once you've done that, you want to make sure that you've identified your testing labs and your proctor caching machines that you're going to be using. So the reason behind this is you want to know how many students you could test at one time if all of your testing labs go online, say at 9 a.m. On a weekday, on a school day. So make sure that you identified all your testing labs, how many potential testing machines are in those labs, so you can get a total count of how many students could potentially be logging on to tests at one time. And then identify your proctor caching machine or machines. You can do more than one, whether you want to do it at district or school level, but identify what machines you want to use for proctor caching. And then you're going to go to step 5, which is install proctor caching. And so I'm going to flip over to the Windows side here. And you can download, sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. You can download pearsonaccess.com. Go to pearsonaccess.com, select Colorado. You can select support and downloads. And you can see proctor caching is listed here for both PC and Mac users. So just download those. I've already done that, so you don't have to sit there and watch me download it. And I've got proctor caching sitting right here. The installer, click on it and click Run. So the installer will launch here. We'll get our first window in just a second. All right. So the first one's just an informational screen. You can click on Next. Server name, it usually tries to grab the machine name off the machine that you're running. Click on Next. And this is asking your installation destination folder. By default, it installs to the C proctor cache folder. You can leave the default, or you can click on Choose, and you can navigate to a place where you actually want to install it to. Take note of this line up here that says TestNav 7 proctor cache must be installed to a location that contains no spaces. You can see proctor cache is one word. There's no spaces between the word. Whatever directory that you designate, if you do a custom one, make sure that there is no spaces in that, that path. So I'm just going to accept the default and click on Next. You can select whatever you want in here. I'm just going to leave the default. Click on Next again, and then this last one, start proctor caching automatically when install completes. That means if you want proctor caching to run as a service on that machine, which I recommend, make sure that that's checked. The reasoning behind that is if you don't select that, it means you have to manually start proctor caching if somebody reboots that machine for some reason. So if somebody does some sort of an update that causes a reboot, if you lose power and it has to reboot, anything like that, proctor caching won't be automatically started. But if you leave this selected, it will run as a service. So that whenever that machine is rebooted, proctor caching is running in the background, ready and able to serve up test content to students. So I'm going to leave that selected, and I'm going to click on Next, and then Install. And it takes me a lot longer to actually talk about it than to actually do it. Okay, so I finished the installer. I'm going to run a quick test to see if proctor caching is actually up and running. So you can simply open a browser, type in http:// the IP address of your proctor caching machine, :4480. Okay? And you should get this screen come up. This is the proctor caching diagnostic screen. It's a web-based interface that actually hits proctor caching and just displays a web page. We've got 3 tabs here, but when it comes up, it means it's up and installed correctly and it's running. So we've completed number 5. The next one is complete system check verification on your workstations and wireless testing labs. So I am going to flip back over and we'll go to PearsonOnlineTesting.com/Colorado. You can scroll down and you can click here to open the system check tool. I'm waiting for it to load here. There we go. So it's loading a Java applet in the background. And if you haven't already given it permission, it may ask you permission to run that Java applet. So we've got 3 tabs here. The first one is going to evaluate the machine that I'm sitting at to see if this machine meets the minimum requirements in order to run TestNav. I'll just click on Start. It will evaluate Flash, the browser, Java, the operating system, and screen resolution. Put the results in this right-hand column here. If it runs into any issues where it doesn't meet minimum requirements, it will display that in red in the results column, so it's hard to miss if there's something in there that isn't going to work or doesn't meet minimum requirements. So I've evaluated this machine. It meets all the minimum requirements. Next, I want to use the Network User Capacity tab. And this is where we're going to do a bandwidth test. We're going to do a bandwidth test between my machine straight out to the Pearson servers. I'm also going to do a test from my machine to my proctor caching machine that I just set up. In order to do the proctor caching machine, I have to tell system check where it is on my network. So I will click on Add Caching Computer, put in a name that means something to me, put in the internal IP address of my proctor caching machine, and the port, which is 4480. Click on Save, and you can see it's listed in here now. Now all I need to do is click Start, and it's going to run a bandwidth test. And we're going to have a little bit of moment of downtime here as it runs the test of the caching machine and the Pearson servers. So it completed the caching machine. The Pearson servers one usually takes a little bit longer. And when this completes, in that right-hand column, it's going to show you how many students you can test at one time if you use no caching machine or if you use a caching machine. What you're going to see is a big difference between the two. And this is why we push proctor caching so hard in environments. You can see that without using proctor caching, if I just direct connected to the Pearson servers, all your students did that, you'd only be able to support 25 students in the environment that I'm in. If I use proctor caching, suddenly that jumps up to 729 students. Huge jump. Your results will vary a little bit, but I expect a huge jump. I've seen 3 times, 10 times. You know, this is obviously even a lot more than that. So this is a good demonstration of how using proctor caching is going to greatly enable you to test a lot of students at one time. It's going to reduce the amount of traffic you download over your ISP connection when you do testing. It's also going to save your ISP bandwidth for everything else that you do in the school. So in other words, you don't have to drastically modify your normal behavior or usage in your school as far as internet usage. So we've completed that. The final one, the testing volume calculator. This is if you want to run any sort of capacity planning scenarios. So this is all manual entry. This is not any test. If you wanted to say, I'm planning on testing 50 students, and I've got this 45 megabit per second link speed between the student's workstation that I'm sitting at and the proctor caching machine. This is my theoretical speed I can do. And then the next one is the average network utilization for the network between the student's workstation and the proctor caching machine. So 20% of traffic is being used on that link. That means 80% of that is available for online testing. And depending on how you adjust that, this output graph will change colors. And see, as I start to go up here, it will turn yellow. Eventually it will turn red. You want it to be white. Yellow means caution, you're getting dangerously close. Red means obviously you're going to have some sort of a problem, you need to rethink things. You want this graph to end up being white if you choose to use this. I rely mostly on the network user capacity tab because that does a real world bandwidth test and that can tell me what I can support. So I've installed proctor caching. I've used system check to evaluate my machine to see if it meets minimum requirements. And I've also evaluated my bandwidth. I will tell you, when you're doing system check, make sure that you're doing it on the student testing machine in your testing lab, and you're doing it, the bandwidth test anyway, at the same day of week, time of day when you expect peak usage as far as testing. If you do this at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning, you're not going to get a realistic bandwidth test. So make sure that you're doing it. If you say my peak usage is going to be 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, then go and do it then. That way you've got all your other traffic going on in your network at the same time and you're going to get realistic results. The final point on number 6, using this for wireless testing labs. People will ask, can you do wireless testing? The answer is yes. You have lots of schools and districts doing that. The other question is, how many students can I test in my wireless labs? And there's no way to give an accurate answer to that, a one-size-fits-all answer. What I do recommend is if you have wireless testing labs, that you do that bandwidth test in the network user capacity tab in your wireless lab from a student machine connected wirelessly. And what that will do is it will see how many students you can support over that wireless connection, because at that point, probably the weakest link in your connectivity chain is your wireless access point. And so if it says you can support 200 students, then you should be okay to do 200 students doing wireless. Number 7 is a step that's really based on what happened, the results in number 6, that TestNav 7 tab, when you evaluated the workstation to see that it meets the minimum requirements. If it didn't, obviously you want to update that so that machine will work. And then what we're going to kind of do is jump down to step 9. We're going to enter the TestNav configuration in the Pearson Access production site, and then Dave will actually be doing step 8 actually. So you've got proctor caching set up in your environment, but how does TestNav know how to pull that content from your proctor caching machine? How does it know where to go, where your proctor caching machine is? That's what we're going to do by putting that configuration in Pearson Access. So kill this window, and I'm going to go back to the Colorado site, and I'm going to do this in the training center. This is where we recommend that you get everything set up and working in the training center, and then once you confirm that your configuration is going to work, then you can put it in the operational side, which is on this Home tab. So these are essentially mirror images of each other for the most part, and the training center is kind of a playground where you can go in and do things and not have to worry about affecting student data or anything like that. So I'm going to log into Training Center. And okay, so here's the training center. It's a different color. The other one's blue. This one is brown. All the background, you can tell the difference. I have the visibility to see the entire state, every district in that state. You are only going to have the ability to see your district when you come in, so you won't have to do the step that I'm doing now. I'm just changing so I see the slice of data that I want to see. So now I am doing this for sample district 3, and I'm going to click on this Test Setup tab and configure TestNav. And I'm going to put in a configuration for my district. And there's a wizard that walks you through this. So I'm going to give this a configuration name. I'm going to call this district config 1 or something like that. And now I'm going to add the organizations I want to be governed by this configuration. So you can do this. You'll click on the Add Organization, and you can look at them by district, or you can look at them by school. In this case, there's only one school. I'm going to do this at the district level. Select it, click Add. You can have more than one, so if you're doing this by school, if you've got 3 schools that you want to use the same caching machine, you can click Add Organization, add the next school, next school, next school. Until you're done, click on Continue. And this is where we'll put in your proctor caching machine's information. So I'll put in a name that means something to me, district caching machine. I'll put in the internal IP address of your proctor caching machine. Port 4480 again. You also configure your encrypted backup locations, and this is where TestNav will save a backup file of the students' responses as they go through the test. The default location is going to be in the user's home directory, and I can show you, excuse me, on Windows. I would be C users or VR, and then it creates a Pearson folder. Okay, and then every time a student logs in, it puts their name in here. These are all EPATs or generic students. That's why they kind of look a little bit weird. But if it was, if I was a student logged in, it would have Brian Martins as the directory name, and then underneath that it says logs and the SRF folders. And this is again an encrypted backup file. The reason we do this is there's got to be a safety net in place. There's a whole big long chain of communication, like Jeff showed you, that goes between Pearson and the student machine. Things can go wrong, Murphy's Law. We want to make sure that we've covered that we've got a safety net in place, and that's where this SRF backup location comes into play. So this is the default location. Depending on what operating system you're using, it'll be slightly different, but the same concept. The user's home directory, they'll create a Pearson folder, and then underneath that, it'll create a directory of their name and then the SRF folder. So you can accept the default location. You can add a secondary location, you know, a map drive, a UNC path, whatever you want to do. You can uncheck the default location and put in 1 or 2 locations. We recommend that you do 2, and we recommend that 1 is local to the student's machine and 1 is a network location. That gives you the greatest protection against things that can go wrong and the greatest flexibility in being able to resume a student on a completely different machine if they had to jump back into the test from a different machine. So I'm going to accept the defaults for the purposes of what we're doing here today. Another note, if you're a Windows-only shop, you don't have any Macs, you don't have to worry about the Mac side of things, and vice versa. If you only use Macs, you don't have to configure the Windows side. So I'm going to click on Continue, and my configuration is done. If I click on it, it will show the information that I put in there. So it's got my configuration name, what organization, in this case it's a district-wide caching machine, and then the details of what I put in there, the IP address, the port, and like I said, I accepted the default locations. So now, when a student logs into TestNav, they're in the login screen, they put in their login credentials. Up to that point, TestNav is directly connected out to Pearson. It's not going through Proctor caching. And when they click on the login button, it authenticates the student directly out to Pearson. It looks to see what organization and test session that student belongs in, and then it will find the Proctor caching machine that it should be using for that test session and say, I need to go to this IP address and port number for all of my test content from now on, and I need to save to the locations designated here. And that's the settings that the student will use as they test. So from that point forward, it redirects all of its traffic to that Proctor caching machine to get test content, and when it uploads student response, they go through that same path. Okay, so we'll flip back, and I think this is where we're going to want Dave to take over here. I'm going to click on Stop Sharing. And you're going to have to pass the ball to Dave now.
All right, and Dave, just a reminder to #6 to unmute your phone, please. And
can you hear me, Jeff?
Transfer? Yes, I can hear you. Brian, are you going to transfer to Dave, or you want me to do it? Okay, Dave, it's on its way to you.
I see it. Just a moment. Okay, can you see my desktop?
Yeah, I can see it.
Great. My name's Dave Erickson, and I'm the Senior Project Manager on the Colorado team. Jeff asked me to pick up on this section of the demonstration. So what we're going to be doing is basically setting up a test session. We will run the student wizard to add a few students to allow us to assign those students to a test session. We'll Proctor cache the test. We will acquire the student authorization tickets, and then open a browser and navigate to TestNav. We'll log in using the information provided on the student authorization, and then we'll be in the test, and we'll take a look at that. Now, we have published what we call EPATs, which are practice test environments, out on Pearson Access. And essentially, the test that we'll be looking at is one of the EPATs that's in the training center just for this demonstration and to allow you to be able to set up Proctor caching. So with that, I'll flip back over pearsonaccess.com, again, just to reiterate, selecting Colorado, brings you to the home page, select Training Center and log in. That will bring you to the Training Center. And just to reiterate, the DACs can create an account for you in the Training Center. These accounts are completely separate from the accounts used to log into the production site. That's to maintain clear lines between the student data and the training site, student data and the production site, and the training site is a sandbox. So once you're in the training site, as Brian pointed out, you'll be in your appropriate organization. At the district level, I have changed my organization to Sample 3 School. So I'm at a school within the district that Brian just set up. And we've created, under student data, there's a wizard to simplify creating students. So what we're going to do is create a new group name, and we'll just call it Proctor Caching Test 1. Going to select a grade, and the grade in the production site, the grade would have to match the grade of the student in the test. That's not going to be an issue here.
Try switching to D3 district.
Okay.
While Dave is going through this, one of the things I wanted to reiterate was that this wizard for creating students is only available inside of the training environment. This is so that as DTCs want to go through conducting the test for end-to-end, you don't necessarily need to do any kind of student data upload or creating kind of individual students. It will automatically create students for you going through this wizard, and that should enable you to kind of bypass some of that step.
You want to go back to student data though, right, and create the students?
Okay, I'm sorry, I should have been at the district level. So now that I'm in the district level, we've got PC test, the district or the school is selected, the test is selected. There's only one default form group. You can see the Proctor caching machine that was configured is available. We'll put in a schedule.
If you want to go back to the student data, though, you don't have any students.
I gotcha.
Tell you what, switch to District 1. We knew that worked. We did that when we were practicing today. We'll just use that one. It's the same configuration that I just put in. There we go. Now we'll create some students for that one.
So we can select the number of students we want to add, create them. Now we'll go over to test management and create a test session. You can see the group that we just created with the 5 students.
Demo, what do you want?
We've created the session. We'll go inside the session. And then we can start the session, which makes it available for testing. Okay, so you can see that we're in the session. It's been started. You can see that we've configured a proctor caching machine and we're accessing that. We have our individual students with their usernames, and here's the test code. To get the authorization tickets, you just go under authorizations. And while we're waiting for that to pop up, we're going to go ahead and proctor cache.
And the proctor caching that Dave is doing here is actually downloading the test content from the Pearson server, pulling that content down to your proctor cache device, and so that's where the content will then be rendered to the students directly from the proctor cache device.
Exactly. Now you can see that we've selected the setup training test that we have available. And now we have the window that spawned and we're waiting for the content to finish downloading. While that's downloading, I'll share the authorization ticket. So it provides the link, the student name, session name, the test, username and test code. That's all the information they need to log in. You can see in the meantime, the content is downloaded and the status is listed as okay. So we're all set on the proctor caching side. We have proctor cached. Now what we're going to do is click on the link, or it can be typed in. And we can then enter our username, which I'm just grabbing from the authorization ticket. Again, that information is also listed on the session details page. With the content downloaded, the session started, the information entered into TestNav, it is launching, and give me just a moment, I'm going to switch my monitor so you can see the actual test. You should now be able to see the patch is loaded. I'm running a dual monitor setup, so the test spawns to the primary monitor. And here we are. So we've, Jeff, can you see the EPAP?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to check. Let me move the toolbar off. So we've successfully created students. We've added those students to a session. We've proctor cached the test content to that session. We started the session, grabbed authorization tickets, used that information to log in. I'll just walk you through the EPAT. Now the EPATs, again, are practice test environments for the students to get to experience the tools and work with them, and also to see sample items, a variety of sample item types. All of the EPATs are available out on PearsonAccess.com, and we just selected one for this test for your benefit to test proctor caching. So the next point we wanted to show was, you can see now I'm running XP on this machine. We're in Documents and Settings, the account, Pearson. This directory was blank just a moment ago. I blanked it out before we started, and you can see that these directories were written, and there's your SRF file that is being saved. Now these SRF files will be generated and deleted throughout the testing session. So they're there for a couple of questions, and they populate and then they move in and out. So you know, it's possible you could look in there at any given instant and not see one, but if you were to monitor the folder, you would see them come and go if you were refreshing. So let me just flip back to one other piece. So I think we covered everything in the list: session setup, wizard, assigning the students, proctor caching the test, authorizations, opening the browser, logging in using the authorizations, executing, and then also verifying the SRF files.
Okay, Dave, could you do me a favor? There was one question that was asked, evidently they missed as far as the proctor cache itself. Can you take us back over to Pearson Access to the screen where you've created the test session and show everybody the button, the proctor cache button that needs to be pressed in order for them to proctor cache the test content?
Will do. Just a moment.
Okay, and Dave, while you're going back to there, I'm going to throw a question over to Brian Martins. Brian, there's a question that's asked out here in reference to, can you have generic network logins on all computers?
Yeah, you can, yes. So each time, in fact, a lot of districts will choose to manage things for online testing that way instead of having a student log into the actual physical machine as themselves. They'll log in with a generic login ID that's only used for online testing, and that way they can use group policy and everything to lock down the machine appropriately the way they want it for online testing. Either way will work, whatever works best for you. You don't have to worry about SRF files overwriting other SRF files. It's a unique file name each time a student logs into a test. So you're not going to overwrite some other student's log file. Even if you designate a network save location where you've got 1,000 students saving to, you're not going to overwrite another student's login file. So a generic login will work just fine.
Okay, and just for reference for everybody, we will be posting this out onto the DTC Academy website, which I'll ask Colin to provide the URL through the chat box over here. In the meantime, Dave, go ahead and walk us through once again as far as that proctor cache.
Okay, so we're back in Pearson Access Training. Again, test management site includes the Manage Test Session module. We have our proctor caching test 2 that we set up with the 5 students that we created. Once you're inside the session details screen, again, this is where the proctor will be to monitor the session, and you can see that we have that student who's active. Within the session details screen, we have the proctor caching button. You just select that. And then you come to the proctor caching screen. It provides you with confirmation of the test that you're able to attach to. Now in production, this would say Social Studies grade 4, Science grade 5. For the purpose of the training site, we have the test name, session, setup, training. You click Next, and you can see the proctor caching is in progress. On this message, a new window will be opened. The new window opens. Proctor caching is verifying the status of the content that's local against the content on the server, making sure it's the appropriate content. and we get a status that we're okay. Additionally, you can, by entering your IP, you can get to the TestNav proctor caching diagnostics page and monitor the content, and that's available at the IP address. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dave. By the way, everybody, Colin has now posted the URL where we will be posting this link, this recording today, and it will be posted down on the bottom left-hand side of that when you go onto the page of that URL. Brian, I'm going to throw another question over to you. It was a question of, do you know if we still need to allow content from Akamai Technologies?
Yeah, we use instead of just distributing content from the Pearson servers, we use the Akamai Distributed Content Network. Basically, there's regional servers all over the country, and when you go to request test content, the content's been mirrored from the Pearson servers out to all these regional servers all over the country. And so when you go to log into a test or pre-cache, it will find out geographically what region you're in based on your IP address, and this is all done behind the scenes. And it will load the content from the nearest distributed content server. By default, I mean, that's what we just did here. We didn't use anything specific. We didn't go to the static IP or anything like that. If you use IP-based filtering, it's possible you may have problems with that Akamai content, distributed content network, and you're going to have to get the IPs rather than the testnav.com and pearsonaccess.com URLs to put into your firewalls, content filters, or whatever. You can get those by contacting Pearson support. You can see on the right-hand part of the screen there the 800 number that's listed. Tell them that you need the IPs, or that you need to talk to technical support, and you need to get the IP addresses to put in your firewalls and content filters. And they will provide you with the IP addresses that you need. The reason we make you do that is we need to know what districts are using IP-based filtering so that we can make sure that we provided them that the right URL is provided to them for the authorization ticket. And but yeah, I mean, in a normal course of events, the distributed content network isn't going to cause any problems. You can use the URLs provided. But just keep that in mind. If you do use IP-based filtering, you're going to want to go that route and call in and get those IPs from us.
Okay, Dave, back to you for one more point.
Sure. Jeff, as you noted, we have the proctor caching software out here. We're just today moving all of the reference guides that were listed on onlinetesting.com that Brian had showed, and they'll all be under the reference guide links, the reference guide link, and then the download software. So, you know, Pearson Access, the support page is our one-stop shop for reference guides, the downloads, manuals. Additionally, we have the EPATs posted out here that the proctors and teachers can be using to allow the students an opportunity to experience TestNav and the tools, look at the items. You know, this can also be a handy troubleshooting piece when you're setting up your workstations, that you can open these, and they have the same requirements to open an EPAT as TestNav. So just want to point out all these resources that are available to you, the call center, and we've added live chat support. So please don't hesitate to call, and if you're ever encountering an issue while students are testing, please, at the beginning of the call with the call center, make it clear that you have students testing, and you'll get a priority escalation on those calls for immediate handling. So that was it.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. And just FYI for everybody, the test content for our fall field test, which starts on Monday, is now available. So if your DACs are creating test sessions for the fall field test, that test content is now available to where they can go ahead and proctor cache. Brian, throwing one more question over to you. have the IP addresses to whitelist stayed the same as they were in spring 2013 field test?
I am not aware that they've changed, so they should be the same.
Okay.
And I didn't know if we wanted to look at TestNav again quickly here, if Dave wants to flip over to that other monitor, if TestNav is still up with that test.
Sure.
We've kind of done this in a few site visits this week.
Oh, actually, I guess I closed it out. You want me to relaunch?
Yeah, we've got some time here. It'll only take like 2 minutes to bring it up and cover something. I just wanted to explain to them about when they're managing their students on their side. I know that's maybe a little bit farther than we wanted to go as far as getting your site readiness stuff, but this is kind of important.
Okay, while Dave's bringing that up, if any of you have any questions, if you want to voice your questions on the telephone here, it is #6 to unmute your line to ask a question, or if you want to submit a question via chat, I'll go ahead and we'll try to get that question addressed as well. In the meantime, too, as a reminder, if you have not done so, please shoot Colin Bonner an email with your attendance today so we can have a record of that.
And I'm almost there. Let me just pick a new student. Since that test was in resume, when I selected the same student, it told me I needed a new student, or resume this student. And so I'm just using credentials from another student, and the test will be popping up. Okay, Brian.
Okay. So I would just click on next. I'll just kind of walk you through, but click on next and answer a couple of questions, just random answers. We won't grade you on this. All right. So let's say that one instruction that we kind of recommend that you give your students is tell them, once they get to the end of the test and they're completed, before they submit their test or anything like that, just have them raise their hand. The teacher will come over and they can click on that section review screen that you see, that button down in the bottom middle. And this is a chance for the teacher to quickly look over and make sure that they've answered all the questions. You can see that we've answered some, we haven't answered others. So if they haven't answered question number 3 or something like that, you could say, did you forget to answer that one? Do you want to go back and answer it, or do you just not know what to put there? But once the teacher in the room is satisfied that they've answered all the questions that they can answer, they can click on Submit and Exit in the bottom left there, and it will give you the exit options. The top one, if you select, I want to return to the test, and then you click Return to the test, it will actually kick you right back into the test, so you're not going to get kicked out of the test, okay? So that maybe you changed your mind. The middle one is if you want to exit the test and finish it later. So if they needed to use the restroom, let's say, they exited out of the test, then they're allowed to log back in. The bottom one, I am finished with this test and I want to submit my final answers. This is your final chance. So if you select this and click on Submit, this test is going to be submitted and graded. So if you want to get back into the test, make sure that you select the middle option if you exit out for some reason. There's a difference between exiting and submitting, and you just need to understand that. But this is a good way to kind of manage things as far as, when students get to the end of the test, making sure they've hit all the answers and that they didn't miss anything, and then exiting out or submitting properly.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much for bringing that back up. I appreciate it. Dave, thank you very much for your time. Again, we will be posting this webinar, this recording, out on the URL that Colin referenced above in the chat window. which basically points you to the DTC Academy. And once you get onto that page, it'll bring up on the bottom left, you'll see recent webinars, and that'll be there, as well as the 2-hour site readiness training that Brian gave a while back. And we will also check to see if we can't get this posted out under the Pearson Access Training and Support tab. But in the meantime, if anybody has any other questions, Colin, Brian, and Dave and I will stay on the line here for about another 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll try to address any questions via either the chat box or through the telephone here. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. In the meantime, we'll hang out to answer any questions. Brian, there's a question posted out here. Is there an easy way to test to see if their port 443 is open?
Ports 80 and 443, the two that I listed there, are standard internet ports. 80 is standard internet traffic. So when I went to PearsonAccess.com, I believe it is, you'll see that the header is http://PearsonAccess.com, right? 443 is secure traffic. So when you log into your bank, you log into Pearson Access, you should get HTTPS for secure. Some school districts do not allow 443 by default. Some leave 80 and 443 since they are very standard internet ports open in their firewalls and content filters. So hopefully that helps answer your question. I mean, they're standard internet ports. I would assume that most districts have both open, but I've seen a few instances where people had 443 locked down for some reason, and we just need to make sure that 443 is open for the two URLs that are listed there.